This is KOKH TV, Oklahoma City.
From Fox 25, this is the 9 o'clock news.
From a Denver courtroom to an Indiana death chamber, the curtain closes on condemned killer Timothy McVeigh. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jack Bowen.
And I'm Kirsten McIntyre. The long journey to justice has ended with a death sentence for mass killer Timothy McVeigh. From that Denver courtroom to the place known simply as the Fence, Oklahoma and America react to the final judgment in Denver. First, Fox 25's Damon Gardenhire has covered this story since the blast. He joins us live with more on this final chapter. Damon?
Yes, Jack. Decision day for Timothy McVeigh after only about 10 hours of deliberations. The jury in this case returned with a sentence of death, and now the families wait for the next chapter of the Oklahoma City bombing case. But for now, this one is behind them.
Okay. Now, how are you next?
Stephen Jones picked up a piece of history from the case of his life. An extra newspaper edition, the sentence, death for Timothy McVeigh. Inside the courtroom, McVeigh sat stoic as always when the verdict was announced.
I hope above all that there isn't going to be the kind of reaction in militia groups that sees McVeigh as a martyr, because anybody that sees a martyr and a man who will blow up innocent people, leave children unable to live decent, ordinary lives, and ruin thousands of people's lives forever, well, I'll tell you right now, that's no martyr. That's a murderer. And
our government does not use death as a solution to social problems.
Earlier in the day, protesters rallied at the courthouse in opposition to the death penalty. But for most of the victims and survivors of this crime, an execution was the only possible sentence. Now, as the victims in this case look back on this as a very painful chapter, close to a painful chapter in their lives, the prosecutors who won the case are looking at it as a very somber moment. Here's what two of the bombing prosecutors had to say this afternoon.
It's not a day of great joy for the prosecution team. We're pleased that the system worked and that justice prevailed. But the verdict doesn't diminish the great sadness that occurred in Oklahoma City 2 years ago. Our only hope is that the verdict will go some way to preventing such a terrible, drastic crime from ever occurring again.
This is not a time to be, cheering and jumping wildly about. It's a pretty somber moment, I think, not only for me, but I'm sure for you and even the victims of Oklahoma City. It's a serious matter to take a person's life.
Now, as the prosecutors have one view of the case, the losing side, the defense definitely has another. We talked with two of the defense attorneys in the case after they were released from their gag order this afternoon. Here's what they had to say.
Has spoken, and their verdict is entitled to respect, and all Americans should accord it that respect until such time, if ever, it is overturned by a court of competent jurisdiction. We ask that the barriers and intolerance which have divided us may crumble, that suspicions disappear, and that hatreds cease.
He reacted calmly and with the same kind of dignity that he's reacted to a lot of other things that have occurred during the course of the past 2 years. He certainly wasn't surprised. He had to be disappointed in a way that nobody else can know.
That was Robert Nye talking about McVeigh's reaction in the courtroom when the sentence was read. Robert Nye was sitting right next to McVeigh, and after the sentence was read, McVeigh was let out of the courtroom almost immediately. And as I told you earlier, he mouthed, "I'm all right," to his family. Whatever else is said about this case, though, it's clear that the jury was very careful, very deliberate in their decision. And it's been often said that the jury often takes on the role or the persona of the judge in any case, and they certainly did that here. Judge Maitch was very deliberate, and they were the same. We tracked down actually one of the jurors this afternoon to get their thoughts on the death sentence for Timothy McVeigh. Here's what she had to say.
I felt there was honesty amongst myself and the other jurors with respect to what our decision was, and we conveyed that to him the best that we could. And I feel that I can't say how he feels. I felt that he respected our decision.
Now, even as the jurors return to their homes and to their normal lives, there's still plenty that the lawyers and the defendant in the bombing case have left. Here's a look at what's next. Let's take a look at that. The defense now has until July 7th to file post-trial motions. Usually that includes an obvious one to get a new trial. Also, the judge will formally sentence McVeigh probably that same day. And finally, a trial date for the Nichols trial must also be selected. We're hearing that will be probably late August, possibly early September. Of course, there are plenty of motions to deal with in terms of the Nichols case. Also, plenty of appeals, as you would expect for this for the McVeigh case. So the entire case itself still has a long way to go. I'll be back later on the show with some final thoughts on the McVeigh sentence. Jack and Kirsten, back to you.
We'll see you then. Thank you, Damon.
It has been a day filled with emotions for folks at the site of the Murrah bombing as well. Visitors to the fence were overwhelmed by the open, empty space where the federal building once stood. Fox 25's Phyllis Williams joins us live from the fence again. Phyllis, that fence is like a magnet, especially on a day like this.
It is, Jack. Some described the wait to hear if McVeigh would get life or death as perhaps the more intense than the moments before he was found guilty for an horrendous act of terrorism. Survivors and victims' families say they were shaking and could barely stand when they heard the news Timothy McVeigh would get death for tearing their lives apart.
I'm just glad that it came back the way it did, because I think, like the scripture from the Bible says, it says an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's the way I believe, and I'm glad it came back like that.
I really know that my mom's death didn't go unpunished.
The death penalty, I don't believe will help anybody heal. I think it's really important to heal, to grieve, and focusing on the fate of Timothy McVeigh is going to derail that process because it focuses on revenge.
And yes, we do have some satisfaction. We don't have a lot, because you can't get satisfaction this way. This is not going to change anything that's happened to any of us. But it's satisfaction to me because the judicial system worked for our favor, for our people that we lost.
I don't have any disagreement whatsoever with the jury's decision. It's the statute itself that I disagree with. I don't think this country should execute its citizens.
May our discourse be civil with each other and toward our tried and proven institutions of government and culture. We acknowledge our gratitude and concern to all who grieved and those who assisted us in our personal search for our new normal.
I have no doubt in my mind my wife's in heaven. And I think that is such a fantastic place that she probably doesn't care what's going on down here right now.
Well, as you just heard, various emotions and thoughts from survivors, victims' families, and others at the fence tonight. When asked if this was closure, one man who lost his wife said, "You can't put boundaries and hurdles on pain." He said this may take a lifetime to get over. Jack?
Phyllis, many people still there tonight?
Yeah, quite a few people. If we can pan down this way, you see quite a few people that are going through. They are looking at mementos, pictures. They're touching the fence, taking pictures as well. And they're trying to get a sense of the impact that shook Oklahoma City nearly, 2 years ago. Jack?
All right. Thank you, Phyllis. Kirsten?
And while some people gathered at the place where it all began, others rushed to the FAA Center. Their family members and survivors watched the decision they'd waited on for more than 2 years.
And when a wrong is rendered, then justice must be served.
It was a bittersweet moment for family members and bombing survivors. While many got the punishment they wanted, they are still grieving for those who died in the blast.
There is no such word as closure for someone who's lost family. Closure doesn't happen. I don't know where that word came from. It makes me angry when I hear it. The only closure I will ever have is when they close the lid on my coffin.
This by absolutely no means heals my heart. What this means is that he can't do it to anyone else.
For weeks now, family members and survivors have watched the trial play out, with McVeigh showing no emotion. Even today, he was stone-faced, which convinced many his punishment was just.
He's a cold-blooded murderer, and he doesn't even deserve
what you do to a dog, he should die, is my opinion.
That maybe if someone within the prison system itself could get to him and do the job for us, he wouldn't be a martyr. I'm hoping for that.
And about 70 people were inside the auditorium when the verdict was read.
Local attorney Dave Dunlap has been watching the trial with us. He joins us now. Dave, first off, let's talk about appeals. Yesterday, Stephen Jones roundly criticized for tacitly confessing for Timothy McVeigh before the jury. Could that be later be used by another attorney to say that was incompetent representation?
This could have been a rather clever tactic by Jones. It's kind of a way of having your cake and eat it too. McVeigh could not get on the stand and admit guilt. I suppose that was a defense strategy. So if the attorney could get up and admit guilt, then possibly he could, it may be like confessing, it might be like admitting you're wrong and maybe get some sympathy from the jury. The interesting thing is that in doing so, it's almost like an admission against McVeigh, so it could have prejudice the sentencing process, and that certainly could be argued on appeal. So in a sense, you could have your cake and eat it too.
Dave, to correct something we talked about this afternoon, let's talk a little bit about the issue that we covered of whether Stephen Jones, if Timothy McVeigh is executed, could Stephen Jones, would he be free to talk and break confidentiality then?
No, he would not. After review of the law, it appears that the secret might die with McVeigh because the personal representative of the estate upon McVeigh's death would still have the right to assert privilege. And that right could last indefinitely, so we may never know the answers.
All right, Dave Dunlap, thanks for being with us. The last time the federal government executed anybody, Timothy McVeigh hadn't even been born, but if he's put to death, it'll be here at the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's the only federal facility with a lethal injection chamber. The last federal execution was in 1963. 14 federal sentences have been imposed since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976.
Victims and relatives we've talked to today say there will never be any closure, but State Senator Brooks Douglas and his sister watched the execution of one of their parents' killers last summer. Senator Douglas says the death penalty has helped him.
It's so important, I think, for people to be able to actually see the justice carried out and to see a sentence carried out, and it's just having this knowledge that you don't have to look back over your shoulder anymore wondering if there's going to be a new trial, wondering if there's going to be another appeal.
Douglas's parents were murdered in 1979. His father was the pastor of the Putnam City Baptist Church. The Oklahoman who leads the nation's largest Protestant denomination says McVeigh deserves to die. Tom Elliff is president of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Of course, as I said, the Timothy McVeigh case is a tragedy. But I do believe personally that the Bible spells out in no uncertain terms that those who deliberately take life should suffer the penalty of death.
And Governor Frank Keating, a Catholic, is pleased with today's verdict despite being at odds with the Oklahoma City Archbishop over the death penalty. The governor says the sentence is one small step toward recovery for Oklahomans and bombing victims.
At least this part is over. The person who lit the fuse, the person who blew up the building, the person who killed all these people has been tried and convicted and sentenced to death. That is a very significant achievement, and we'll take every bit of this day at a time.
President Clinton is thanking the jury in the Oklahoma City bombing case for what he calls their grave decisions.
And the wheels of justice are still turning, and very soon Timothy McVeigh could find himself inside an Oklahoma County courthouse. District Attorney Bob Macy will try McVeigh for the murders of the 160 other people in the bombing. The Fox News Channel's Rita Cosby joins us live now with more insight into what's next. Rita?
Jack, although the McVeigh trial is over, emotions are still raw, as you said, here in Oklahoma City. Many people believe that there are still unsolved mysteries, and this case is not closed. Oklahomans say there are still questions surrounding the bombing, and they are demanding answers, even answers from the federal government.
I think some in the federal government, some of our ATF and FBI, had prior knowledge that this was going to occur.
Oklahoma's governor calls claims that the government ignored prior warnings about the deadly blast absurd.
I think that is just fanciful. It's beyond imagining. There's got to be a motive for things. What's the motive for hiding prior knowledge.
Despite strong opposition from both local and federal government leaders, Oklahoma State Representative Charles Key has succeeded in garnering enough signatures to have a grand jury convened at the end of this month. The grand jury will not only look into allegations of prior knowledge, but also if the government covered up evidence and if there are more people responsible for this act of terror. To further support his views, Key put together this video called Oklahoma City, What Really Happened. Key received $2,000 from the video's sales. He says it was for covering business costs. His critics allege he's profited from the crime. But even some critics, like Oklahoma County's district attorney, who'll oversee the grand jury, believe another investigation could clear the air.
If truth comes out of this grand jury, then it'll be a good thing. And of course, he's raised some issues, and maybe the grand jury will find answers to some of those issues.
Survivors of the blast are divided on the importance of the grand jury.
I think it's just a waste of time and money on everyone's part.
What I want to see come out of that grand jury is try to find out who the John Doe 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s are, however many there are. Because as long as we got a single one of them still out there, they attempted to murder me. And I still feel threatened.
And the investigations here are far from over. In addition to convening the grand jury at the end of the month, well, state charges may also come. Timothy McVeigh may be tried on those state charges, and a citizens group is also pushing for public hearings. Back to you, Jack.
And Rita, on the issue of prosecuting this case locally, the district attorney, Bob Macy, gave you an interesting figure on the percentage of cases that get overturned, death penalty convictions.
Yeah, he was saying actually that more than 1 out of 4 cases do get overturned, and that's why, although he has been convicted in a federal court and now sentenced to death, he says there is a possibility that that could be reversed, and if that should happen, he wants to have state charges to back it up so he could face the death penalty here.
Rita Cosby, thanks for the help. The leader of the Oklahoma unorganized militia says he believes Timothy McVeigh and others bombed the federal building and that they were working for federal agencies when they did it. Ross Hullett heard of Timothy McVeigh's death sentence when I called him on the phone this afternoon.
My reaction is that anybody that was involved in any way to blow up a federal building or kill innocent American citizens should be hanged. However, I believe that it takes a fair trial with competent evidence given to a jury and not a teaspoonful of circumstantial evidence and 4 barrels of tears to get a jury reaction.
Hullett says he believes the Denver trial was scripted ahead of time by the parties involved and turned out according to that script. He also says an Oklahoma County grand jury investigation has the potential to reveal more truth about the bombing.
And recapping today's sentencing in Denver, the jury deliberated almost 11 hours before sentencing Timothy McVeigh to death for killing 168 people in the Oklahoma City bombing. Survivors and family members gathered in Denver at the FAA Center and at the bomb site are somber, saying they are happy with the verdict even though it will never erase the hurt. And Oklahoma County District Attorney Bob Macy says he'll continue efforts to hold a second trial on state charges right here in Oklahoma. And next on the 9 o'clock news, police ask for your help in a string of burglaries in one Oklahoma City neighborhood.
Also, another mall is sweeping up glass after the 7th smash and grab of the year.
And dozens of people gathered tonight to remember Crystal Dittmeyer and raise awareness of missing children. Tim?
Could have some excitement in our weekend forecast. I'll talk about that and some all-American romance as the news continues.
That's, that's the way I see it. If we didn't put someone to death for this, if they didn't have to pay the ultimate price with their life, then what we're telling the rest of the world or the rest of the country is there's nothing that you can do so bad that the worst thing that we can do to you is give you a lifetime of room and board.
Thank you.
The 9 o'clock news with Jack Bowen, Kirsten McIntyre, meteorologist Tim Ross's weather, and Mike Steele with sports.
It was a year ago today that Crystal Dittmeyer, who was 12 years old then, disappeared.
Crystal was last seen outside her apartment building in South Oklahoma City. Since then, her father, Jeff, with the help of family and friends, has put her picture and information on billboards and posters and handed out thousands of flyers in the metro area.
The final chapter has not yet been written.
We need to raise the awareness of parents everywhere to keep an eye on their children and know what's going on with them at all times.
Dittmeyer says police are still working on some leads in the case and are waiting on some lab results. He is also doing his own investigation. Family and friends are also trying to find information on Crystal.
And Crystal is one of many missing and abused children remembered by Metro residents who gathered tonight. The Child Awareness Hour was organized by Crystal's family and friends. They say the event's needed because of recent reports of more missing children. Participants made signs to hold up around the city tonight to mark the time that Crystal's disappearance was first called in to police. An upcoming divorce is apparently to blame for a murder-suicide in Ardmore. Police say a man drove up from Texas to the Ardmore Walmart where his wife worked. When she left to go home, witnesses say the man grabbed his estranged wife and shot her as she struggled to get away. Then police say the man shot himself. The couple had 2 children.
Oklahoma City police are on the lookout for burglary suspects who may be involved in at least 7 break-ins in Oklahoma City. And they say they could be dangerous since they are breaking into homes while people are actually sleeping. Police say the criminals have hit an area bordered by Northwest 10th and 36th and from North Portland to North MacArthur.
We believe that they're related because a possible suspect vehicle in one of the burglaries was a vehicle stolen in a burglary earlier in the month. So we know it's the same people. And in 4 of the instances, they stole vehicles when they committed the burglaries.
Investigators say in most cases the criminals are entering homes through unlocked windows and doors. If you have any information, please call Oklahoma City Police. A local mall has been hit in the 7th smash and grab break-in this year. Police say around 5:15 this morning the suspects allegedly drove a Chevy S10 pickup through the east entrance of Shepherd Mall. Once inside, the crooks hit 2 jewelry stores, taking an undetermined amount of property.
Talk about bold. Wow.
Amazing, and they keep happening,
Keeps
too.
happening, yeah. And coming up on the 9 o'clock news, the latest from around the world, including a deadly fire at a theater in India.
Also, a country singer's bus is involved in a fatal accident on the way to a concert.
Detonated a weapon of mass destruction, resulting in the deaths of our friends, co-workers, loved ones, and relatives. We the people stand behind the jury's verdict and just sentence.
Deadly fire at a movie theater in New Delhi, India.
At least 57 people were killed after a fire spread to a balcony. Lots of people were trapped there, and when false ceilings in the hall caught fire, they were killed by smoke. Others were trampled to death in the rush to escape the building. Officials don't know what started the fire.
A barge loaded with hydrochloric acid is leaking fumes on the Mississippi River. Coast Guard officials say the leak near Baton Rouge doesn't pose a danger to people or the environment yet, but they're moving the barge to an unpopulated area as a precaution. A chemical response team is moving in to plug the hole leaking the dangerous solution, and remaining cargo will then be pumped to another barge. One of country singer Neil McCoy's tour buses was in a wreck that killed 2 people this morning. The accident happened before dawn near Henrietta, Texas. Police say 2 people died when their car crossed the highway median and smashed head-on into the bus. McCoy was in a second bus. His band was heading to Fort Worth for a show.
A standoff in Mount Vernon, Washington has ended peacefully. Police say a man speaking out for the right to bear arms bared it all. Around 5:30 this morning, the man was found lurking in a residential area completely naked. After police confronted him, he fled to the highway and, armed with a knife, climbed on the top of a truck. He was arrested and taken to a hospital for a mental evaluation. It's a wise decision to hand the keys over when you've been drinking, but you should hand them over to a person. However, a driver in Clearwater, Florida, let his pet iguana get behind the wheel. The swaying car was spotted by 2 Florida State police officers. They found the man slumped down in the driver's seat with his 3-foot iguana doing the steering. The man was charged with a DUI, and his iguana was taken to a local animal shelter.
Looks relaxed. More good news from the financial world tonight could mean more money in your pocket. Stock markets up some more and inflation under control. First, today the government released the latest producer price index. It's down for the 5th straight month. That means deflation instead of inflation, which translates into falling prices at stores. Second, good news if you're playing the stock market or just hoping to retire off that 401k. The Dow Jones Industrials and NASDAQ Composite loved the deflation news. They wrapped up week-long rallies today with record highs again.
Well, lots going on this weekend, including Aerospace America and Red Earth.
And they want good weather, Tim.
We're going to get it.
There will be some good weather, but there may be some sparks flying too. Just keep that in mind. We'll bring you details. Also, some sparks may fly in my weathercast. They might. Romance we're talking about next.
Mercy versus vengeance, which is the way it's been portrayed by some in the media. It's not a matter of mercy versus vengeance, it's a matter of justice.
Hi, this is Chris and we're at Dr. Hirsch's office and we have a question for Tim.
Hey Tim, how's the weather?
They've all got big plans this weekend. If you do too, I can report the weather's just fine. You'll meet Doc Hirsch and his friends there in just a short while. First off tonight, I want to talk just a little bit of romance. I'm going into the romance business here tonight. This is Scott Crane. This is Maria Titano. I don't know either one of them, but they asked me, or at least Scott asked me, to get involved in his marriage proposal tonight. Here's a little statement from him to Maria. In my lifetime, I have looked forward to a day when I would feel complete. Because of you, today is that day. Yes, you are my soulmate and perfect match, and I am the key and you are the latch. I love you with all of my heart. Will you marry me? Scott Crane, Maria Titano. Scott wants to marry you. Let us know. We'll try to bring it on the news at the end of the newscast. Let us know. Scott, good luck to you. Glad to be part of the process tonight here on Fox 25. Lots of clouds out there over northern parts of Kansas. Actually, southern Kansas, northern Oklahoma last night in Wichita resulted in 18,000 homes being out of power. At one time, a pregnant woman trapped in a car in 3 feet of rushing water came to term, began to have labor, and almost had a baby if it hadn't been for a police officer that rescued her and took her to the hospital. Lots of floods up there last night and some action popping and snapping here last night. 77 degrees the temperature right now. Northeast breeze is fluttering just a little bit. It won't be that big a deal, though, as we go through the next day or so. High temperature today, did manage to get to 85 as the sun came out. 87 is the average. Look at this one. That's the big one. Almost an inch of precip at the airport last night. Ooh, was that a good shower. The only problem, I had the dog and about 6 kids in bed with me last night. Nobody could sleep a wink with all the popping and snapping going on. Perhaps you had that same problem. Look at the clouds tonight. We started out early today, southeastern Oklahoma. Big patch of thunderstorms, but they died out pretty rapidly. A few thunder showers did develop down there, but they jumped down into Texas and again died out. Look what's happening out west. We thought maybe we get a cluster going out there, but high pressure is building in now, and that's going to dry the atmosphere at least for about 24 hours. High pressure coming down into northern Oklahoma will sink slowly behind this trough into the state, and that dries us out for just a little bit. I think, though, by tomorrow night, Saturday night, tomorrow night into Sunday morning, we could have another wave come off the Rockies and produce some more thunder showers for us. So make your plans around that. That looks like the best bet tomorrow night into the first part of Sunday. Here's forecast temperatures for the night around the state. A little cooler air sinking into the northwestern parts. If you can call 59 cooler out at Woodward, it's going to be kind of a sticky night still. High temperatures tomorrow will work their way well up into the 80s. Look at that. 90s coming all the way over the Red River, clear up into southern Oklahoma or southern Kansas, and it will be a warm day over the entire region. Here's forecast tonight for Oklahoma City proper. Say bye-bye to the boomers. No boomers out there tonight. You'll get a good snooze, hopefully. 66 for the low. The high tomorrow back up to 87, just like today, and I'm simply going to say, show me the sunny. Lots of sunshine around these parts. Here's your Fearless 5-day forecast. Temperatures stay warm. It's that time of year. Summer is back. Best chance of thunder showers late tomorrow night into Sunday if they materialize at all. Looks like a pretty good weekend on balance.
Yeah, for all the events. Aerospace, Red Earth, go for it.
Maria, let us know. Want to know if Scott said?
Get that phone ringing.
Yeah.
And you know today is Friday, right?
Which means that Tim has been out honoring another caring and giving Oklahoma worker.
I'm Tim Ross from Fox 25, Bob's lovely and talented weather guy. Man, oh man, was Dr. Jeff Hirsch a bit surprised this morning when he came to work. He is to me and others a glimpse of what I would like to be. I immediately informed him that he'd been selected as this week's Fox 25 Ray of Sunshine. He was nominated for the honor by his office staff. They think he's a great guy. If you could name someone in this office that is a ray of sunshine, who is that person?
Dr. Hirsch.
And it didn't stop there. They all had a few words of praise.
I mean, he's not just a doctor that just sees people's names on charts. They're our friends.
What makes him such a ray of sunshine?
Because he has a good heart.
And this from a man who is himself overwhelmed by a personal battle with his own wife's serious illness. Dr. Hirsch is a one-of-a-kind physician, a fallback to yesterday, if you will. His patients say there's just no one like him in all the world. We wish him and his wife well. Dr. Hirsch, thanks for the great example you set and for all the good you do.
That's great.
And we've all got some rays of sunshine, too.
Oh, we do. Our dads on this
That's right.
weekend.
Father's Day is coming up. And at this time, I want to introduce you to my dad. He doesn't know about this. I know he's probably watching. This is my dad, Murray, to the left of me. And my dad, Murray, is a great guy, one of my very biggest fans. Always been there for me no matter what. And I tell you, he does everything I need him to, even change the oil. And Dad, if you're listening, I need that done this weekend. And I think one of the biggest compliments, I think, is that my dad raised 5 kids and with my mom, but all of my siblings are just great people. And I think that's that shows how great my mom and dad are, because all my brothers and sisters are just so great, and we know the difference between right and wrong and integrity and all that.
Well, happy Father's Day to him. Tim?
My dad is not able to watch tonight. He's living up in southwest Iowa, a little town called Audubon. His name is Cam. Dad always, well, when I was in trouble, if you can believe that, occasionally got in trouble in school. Yeah, my teachers once told me I'd never make a good living goofing off and talking too much. I've been doing it successfully for 20 years because of that guy right there. Dad always said, whatever you do, son, have fun and you'll do fine. He says, if you're a goofball, just make sure you're a good goofball. Do something good for someone somewhere.
Well, one of the reasons I've always wanted to come back to Oklahoma City is my family. I'm very close to my family, and my dad is terrific. That's my dad there. Gene and my mother, Carolyn, they are looking very dapper, aren't they? They are terrific people. My dad taught me how to dream big and told me the most important thing to life, and working is doing what you want to do, and I'm doing that because of what my dad has taught me, and I love him a lot.
Sure, they're proud of you. Well, I lost my dad 13 years ago, but one thing my dad told me was nobody can ever take your memories away from you. I remember a lot of good times, like the time we were out fishing. That's sort of our Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn pose. Grandma Bowen took that picture of us. I was probably about 10 or 11 at the time. And the beautiful thing I learned about this, you know, I don't remember many of the things my dad bought for me, but boy, I remember the time that he spent with me. I always said he was on a vacation, occasionally interrupted by work, because he spent a lot of time with us. So, Dad, thanks for the memories tonight.
And you know, one thing I've learned as I've gotten a little older, and that is, you know, so often we wait until, in your case, you know, your dad is gone. But, you know, don't wait until dads are gone. Tell them now, because you won't get another opportunity. Yeah, you may not.
Scott Crane, Maria Titano says yes, she'll marry you.
All right.
Fox 25 comes through again.
That's good. All right, 2 for 2 now.
You need to work on me now.
Yeah. More to come on the 9 o'clock news, including 2 of the biggest events of the summer.
And we'll preview the Red Earth Festival and Aerospace America. Next, don't go away.
Kind of bittersweet, I guess. There's no closure today. It just doesn't seem like, you know, after this long, it's nothing that wasn't expected.
The annual Red Earth Festival celebrating Native American culture is underway here in Oklahoma City. Thousands filled downtown Oklahoma City this morning for the Grand Entry Parade featuring tribes from all around the country. Traditional dance competitions began this afternoon at the Myriad. Arts, crafts, and other exhibits are also on display at Red Earth. The festival's drawn visitors from around the world.
No, we came to see the sacred dances of the Osage, and that was early on in the trip. And now we're here to see kind of the culmination of all of the nations getting together. And, so they're all having a wonderful time, and so are we.
Red Earth lasts through Sunday. More than 125,000 people are expected to attend.
Lots of fun. And hey, it's a big weekend here in Oklahoma City. Not only do we have Red Earth, but it's time for Aerospace America. The Flames are making lots of noise tonight, and it's guaranteed to stay that way throughout the weekend. Some of the highlights include some real daredevils, as you saw there, the Thunderbirds and skydivers. All the fun continues until Sunday. Tickets to Aerospace America are $12 for adults and $6 for children.
Well, planners say it'll put Oklahoma City on the map for celebrity restaurants. Construction's begun on Jimmy Johnson's 3-ring bar and grill. The Miami Dolphins coach is building a $2.5 million sports-themed restaurant on the north side of Oklahoma City's Clarion Hotel. The new restaurant will feature a wide variety of food as well as sports entertainment. The Oklahoma restaurant will be the prototype for what could become a national chain.
He was looking at a number of markets to really kick this off with, but he chose this one because he's familiar with this part of the country and he's comfortable here, and he's quite honestly very excited about getting back into this market.
Johnson coached the OSU football team before moving on to the University of Miami and the Dallas Cowboys, then to the Miami Dolphins. The restaurant should be open this fall. We don't know if it will have a Barry Switzer room.
I
wonder if you bring a complimentary can of hairspray that you might get a discount or something.
Well, that
at Jimmy's restaurant.
That's something you might want to
have to be industrial strength, though.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt about it. Well,
that rock
same
hard
here.
stuff.
You know. But I want to tell you about a Ranger big gun, former Oklahoma State Cowboy, back in Oklahoma City tonight. We'll have his story coming up next.
Thank you. We're fine.
Good evening, everybody. The NBA Finals could come to a close tonight. That is if the Bulls take care of business at home in Game 6 against the Jazz tonight at the United Center. So far, the Jazz playing some sweet music in this one. They've just started the third quarter. Utah leads Chicago 44-37 in the third. U.S. Open Golf Championship continues at Congressional Country Club with the top players in the world taking aim at opening round leader Colin Montgomery. But he would fall apart. This guy would make a charge today. Tiger Woods here on 14. Gets to 5 under par on the day. He is at 1 over par through his second round. On 14, Tom Lehman here, the great approach shot. He knocked that in for a birdie, shoots a 3 under 67. He is your leader today. That's where he's at, actually, is 3 under. And the shot of the day, Jose Maria Olazabal on number 9. The par 5, that's his third shot. That is called an eagle. He likes it. Check the leaderboard. They didn't complete all of the second round today, but of those who finished, Lehman is your leader. Ernie Els second with Stuart Sink a shot back, and Mark McNulty. Jeff Maggard also at -1, 139. Tiger Woods +1, 141. Tom Lehman pretty happy with that second round today.
I'm playing very methodically, very steadily, and if I can continue that for 2 more days, you know, I think I'm going to do just fine.
All right, let's talk a little bit about former OSU and current Rangers star Mickey Tettleton. He is back in Oklahoma City now for just a while. Tettleton started a rehab assignment with the 89ers tonight. He's been in the Rangers club, of course, for a while, but been on the disabled list since injuring his knee early in the season.
Well, right now there's really no time frame on when we're going back. I think that our main objective is to make sure that it's sound, both physically and mentally. It's been a while since I've been out there, so I think we got to get both back in shape. But it feels pretty decent right now. I've had no problems swinging the bat, really no problems running. It's just a matter of getting out there and doing it again every day.
Check out the Niners in action tonight against the Indianapolis Indians, back home for a homestand. The Indians, though, break out to the early lead. Eric Owens with the single to center. Pat Watkins scores later. Tettleton will come up with 2 outs at the end of the second inning, and he grounds out to third to end a possible scoring threat. The 89ers trailing this game. Check the latest update, 5-3 in the 9th inning. To the big leagues tonight. Turner Field in Atlanta, where Davey Johnson and the Orioles dropping in for some interleague action against Bobby Cox and the Braves. Tell me interleague play's not great. 2 future Hall of Famers squaring off there. Greg Maddux and Cal Ripken Jr. with the single there to put the Orioles on top by a score of 2-0. The O's going to win this game. Your final was 4-3. Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Michael Irvin embroiled in controversy yet again. Can you believe it? Irvin already on probation for cocaine possession in Texas, and now the San Francisco Examiner says San Francisco police want to talk with Michael. The 30-year-old man tells police Irvin assaulted him in the basement of a local nightclub. Michael admits he was in San Francisco, but
I know nothing about hitting, beating, whooping, whatever, anybody, anytime. Let me show you my knuckles. Still fine. I haven't hit anybody, haven't touched anybody, and don't know anything about that.
Sounds like Sergeant Schultz and Hogan's Heroes there with the I Know Nothing. This is not your typical base brawl last night. This is the female Colorado Silver Bullets women's team in action against the state champion boys 18 and under team from Georgia. 2 out in the ninth. One of the Silver Bullets players hit by a pitch, and she charges the mound. The pitcher was laughing. The Silver Bullets' Kim Bratz-Bossard charged the mound, emptying both benches. So
we don't see that very often.
Boys will be boys, and ladies will be ladies, I guess.
That's right.
Playing
sometimes.
a boys 18 and under team.
That's right.
Boy, that was a deal.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Next on the 9 o'clock news, we're going to go back to Denver for a final wrap-up on the Timothy McVeigh bombing sentence.
Don't go away.
Unless they've been in our shoes and lost somebody the way we lost our loved ones, then they are not in a position to judge, I don't think.
As we said, we're going to go back to Denver now, where Timothy McVeigh was sentenced to death for the Oklahoma City bombing today.
Fox 25's Damon Gardenhire joins us now live. Damon?
Kirsten, Jack, joining me now live is Rob Nye. He is a member of the McVeigh defense team. He actually sat next to Timothy McVeigh in the courtroom when the sentence was announced today. Give me an idea of what your feelings were when the sentence was read.
We were extremely disappointed. I think we were realistic about what the potential was for a life verdict, but you always hold out hope, and we held out hope, and of course it was gone when the jury came back.
Mr. Nye, the last week and a half of the very emotional testimony we heard from so many of the victims, the survivors, 38 witnesses that the prosecution presented in this phase. A lot of legal experts said that was almost, if not impossible, to overcome on your part.
I would say that it was extremely difficult to try to overcome that. That testimony was the most devastating testimony I have ever experienced. The pain that was in the courtroom was real and it was tangible. And it was an extreme hurdle to attempt to get to the jury to listen to the defense aspect of the sentencing hearing.
One of the things the judge, one of the decisions he made in the case was to not allow, for instance, Carol Howe's testimony during your presentation of testimony in the guilt phase. Do you expect that will be an appeal for you at some point?
In the appeal, if the motions that we file between now and the time of sentencing are not successful, in the appeal we will of course raise issues about evidence that was excluded, some evidence that was admitted that we wanted excluded, procedural matters that the judge dealt with along the way.
What about the FBI crime lab was severely truncated in terms of the report, the Inspector General's report, some of that stuff that was not allowed into evidence on your part. What sorts of things go through your mind as far as possible appeals there?
You always have the right to appeal decisions concerning defense evidence that was excluded. And there was defense evidence concerning the Office of Inspector General report about the FBI laboratory that we wished to admit into evidence, and the motion was denied. That will certainly go into our thinking in terms of the appeal process.
What would you like to, perhaps Oklahoma City people, to know most about this case from your standpoint?
I think perhaps most of what I would like them to know, they already know, in terms of the way the system works and the defense of Mr. McVeigh. The people that I have come into contact with from Oklahoma have showed a great deal of understanding about the system and how it works and the absolutely critical need to have Mr. McVeigh represented in the best way possible. And we've tried to remain true to the ideals of the people of Oklahoma in our defense of this case.
All right, Rob Nye with the defense team for Timothy McVeigh. Thank you for joining us live. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And do you plan on going to see Mr. McVeigh this weekend?
It's probable that I will, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir, for joining us live.
Thank you.
And Jack and Kirsten, there's a long way to go yet in this case. As we know, the Nichols trial is still coming up. The defense has until July 7th to file their post-trial motions. And it's also expected that date there will be the formal sentencing for Timothy McVeigh at the same time. Jack, back to you.
Damon, you'd heard from some sources Timothy McVeigh might consider pleading guilty just to avoid to charges locally to avoid coming here for a trial. Heard anything new about that?
Actually, I asked around about that today because the gag order had been lifted, and there were some indications that was an option on the table. Now we're told, at least on the record, that that is not going to be the case. We'll just have to wait and see.
Jack, right, thank you, Damon. And again, at about 4:20 this afternoon, Oklahoma time, the jury in the Oklahoma City bombing trial returned a death sentence for Timothy McVeigh.
And that is our news for tonight. We appreciate you tuning in to us.
Have a good weekend. Good night.